As part of our course of the World War, we are continuing with one of the two most significant battles of the war. In the names of number one, we have the Battle of Verdun. Battle of Verdun. Then number two, Battle of what? Somme. Right. So, under the Battle of Verdun, it was in February 1916. That was in February 1916, if my memory is serving me well. That was in February 1916. It was mainly between France and Germany. Right. So Verdun was France's fortress town. Was France's fortress town. What does it mean? If we say this one is a fortress town. Huh? Do you watch football? Yes. If we say the Estadio Santiago Bernabéu is Real Madrid's fortress, what does it mean? Yes.
It means that it was the main. It was the main.
Right? If we say it's a fortress, like here in Zimbabwe, there is like Emagomeni Baba Field Stadium for Highlanders. It's a fortress there, right? Right? Yes, it's a main territory. Yes, it is right. Like it's not easy to come up with a win. Like for example, at the Bernabéu, right? Yes, it's not easy to come up with a win. Yeah, it's a fortress town, right? So Verdun was France's fortress. That's where most of the military was trained, and also where she also kept what? Ammunition. Like it was also a what? A arsenal. That's why that Arsenal Football Club is also called the Gunners. And Arsenal is a place where weapons are kept, right? Yeah, so the fortress town called Verdun was the heartbeat of France. So what was Germany's plan? Germany's plan was to capture Verdun so that he can knock out France out of the war. That was the plan. Right. So according to Falkenhayn, who was the Germany's commander, then Britain was the iron pillar of the Allied forces. However, it could be easily be removed out of the Allied war by a serious submarine warfare. That was the point, and we all know what a submarine is. So we will also touch on the war at sea, where we will touch on the submarine warfare. They usually call it the U-boat campaign. Right. So what was Germany's plan here? Britain was so formidable in the waters. When I say Britain was so formidable in the waters, I'm simply saying Britain was so strong in the war at sea. So Germany's plan was now to deal with Britain via this submarine warfare. Right? That's the plan, and they would know that Britain is now one down. Then secondly, they had to deal with this Verdun fortress so that she would get rid of what? Of France. That was the plan. Right. So Falkenhayn viewed that France was the main German objective, and Verdun was a very important French fortress and the central point of activity of the French defensive system, which threatened the German lines of communication. So by pulling the French manpower into the defense of the Verdun, Falkenhayn hoped to destroy the forces, capture Verdun, and knock France out of the war on 21 February 1916. So the Germans opened their barrage on 21 February 1916. What was Germany's plan here? Germany's plan was to come up with an offense, right? Germany's plan was to come up with an offense. An offense is an attack on what? On Verdun. So when she would open that barrage, like what these notes have just stated, the French would surround Verdun, right? And it would be easy for them to be attacked, right? It's so hard to attack, even in football. madefender wangoungana pagedhi pesoda zvinenge zviri easy kuti wangu ndosaka tinoti kana chitarisa yatinoti back 4 panenge paina right back, left back nemacenter back ndizvo. Why is it like that? It is because vanenge vachibatsiridza pakuvhara width or macross. Because right back wenyu akatamba ari mukati anopa mukana wekuti the attacker from the left can easily cross. Right. So mukanovhara gate makaungana pakati munongogoizwa. Because my opportunities ekuti bhora risvike pagate anenge mune makapa vanhu nzira ndizvo. So that was the plan yeGermany. As you're right, vana vanoda paVerdun steering. So obviously vachamovhara vangoungana ipapa. So it will be easy to attack them. Right. Ndo mafungira aita Germany. So a concentrated German infantry caused the French to retreat, and the fall of Verdun was imminent with high casualties. So the French retreated, right? And pakafiwa, what is it? There were heavy casualties, and the British, Russians, and the Italians came to help France. Then the British, under the commander Haig, took control of the French Arras sector, and Britain and the Allies raised the offensive, which compelled Falkenhayn to withdraw. So that's when the Allied help came through, because the France yange appetite. Britain no better zopinda, they are France to repel the what? German forces. They helped to strengthen the resistance under the command of Lines Marshal Pétain. Marshal Pétain, Marshal Pétain of France was leading the defense. He is the one who said, they shall not pass. Yeah, that's what he said. The Germans shall not what? Shall not pass into Verdun. If they would try to pass, they would be blade white. Eh? They would be blade white. What does it mean? The word blade is on the word bleed. If we say you are going to be blade white, it's not really. Have you ever seen my injury? Which one of bones are white? Yeah. Kunzi yotra ubudisa ropo swika taona chiwaiti kuratidza kuti aiva amawani. Statement iroro rairema raiedzota kuti Germany haisi kuzopinda. Vakada kungotraya kupinda chete will bleed them white. Right. So the Germans, they had no plan to go back to the what? To the trenches. And Hindenburg and Ludendorff replaced Falkenhayn as the new German commanders, and the French lost about 350,000 men, while the Germans lost 330,000 men, but Verdun did not fall to the what? To the Germans. In terms of casualties, the French lost, right? Yes, they lost, but the Germans did not manage to capture what? Did not manage to capture Verdun. So the importance of Verdun is, number one, in that Verdun, Germany, due to her persistence to the area, she lost heavily in terms of manpower and resources. German advance to capture Verdun was checked by Pétain, who defended the fortress stubbornly. And the Allied powers poured in reinforcements. Was what saved France in this regard, where the Allied what? With the Allied powers assisting. Without the Allied powers, Verdun's fall was so imminent, and it was bound to happen. Because Germany was so much determined to deal with Verdun. So Germany's onslaught was held, huge offensive against the Germans at Somme by the Allies. So we said we are going to touch on the Battle of Verdun and the Battle of Somme. The Battle of Somme was initiated by Britain because Britain wanted to relieve the pressure that was on France. From what? From Germany. Kuti Germany yanga concentrator kuattack Verdun. Then Britain, since yanga France, friend of France, yakabata no azviti, dayatanga a battle ne Germany, a battle of Somme, which means Germany yanga kutotora mamwe masoja anga ari pa Verdun kuya ku Somme. So that she would relieve the what? The pressure. So Russian offensive under the General Brasilov in Galicia against Germany's ally Austria-Hungary too, you know. So it was pressure mounting. So let us look at the Battle of Somme. Right. Like I said, since Germany was persisting on attacking Verdun, right? Britain had to come through and assist the allies by starting an offense at Somme against Germany. So the British launched an attack on Somme. The aim was to reduce or relieve the pressure on the French at Verdun. So this battle was initiated by Douglas Haig again. He aimed to break the German defense forces and capture German forces at Cambrai and Bapaume. So the battle was a series of attacks commencing, they started on 1 July, lasting through November 1916, and on both sides, many soldiers died. And at that point, even from Verdun, the Germans lost morale and they failed to capture Verdun, though the French and the British failed to defeat Germany. It was a deadlock. They failed to defeat the Germans. Because the Germans are not a situation, and that's what prolonged the war. Right. So France changed its general, Joffrey, with a young general called Neville, and the British Haig was replaced by a once more active general to work with Neville to put off German attacks. Because it was just funny that they were failing to put down one country. Are you getting the sense? Yes. Because initially when Germany was attacking Verdun, you find out that Russia had to support Russia. Russia had to support France. Then Britain again, according to their alliance system, had to support what? France. But they failed to defeat Germany. And Germany was like one country. Germany had weak allies, didn't we say that? Most of the Central Powers relied on Germany for assistance. When Austria, and you know, Italy last lesson, Italy got teasers, so most of my allies in Germany, they were so weak. So we try to know help Germany. So there is a way back with my changes. Prime Minister. It is because the people were frustrated. Britain, France. Why are you being defeated in one country? Right. So it was at the Battle of Somme that Britain used the tanks for the first time. They had invented, and it was at this Somme battle that discredited Douglas Haig, the commander-in-chief of the Western Front, and that led to the resignation of the British Prime Minister. Haina kudzingisa mkuru wemasoja chete. Na Prime Minister chaya yakasvika pakudzingwa. And Asquith was the Prime Minister and was replaced by Lloyd George. So when the Allied forces finally abandoned the attack, losses were heavy on both sides. Fewer on both sides. It saw me the Germans lost about 500,000 men, Britain lost about 200,000 men, and France lost about 400,000 men. But neither side won a decisive victory. And you know, Japan also fought on the side of Britain. So this is the Battle of Jutland and the Battle of Somme. The impact or the importance of this is the fact that these countries lost manpower, they lost their morale too, right? Yes, that's as simple as that. So tomorrow I'm coming, we'll continue, but we have to revise before tomorrow's lesson. So thank you and bye-bye for now.